This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Report, a show made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and with me is Anders, and I give us this week's topics.
Well, January was an impressive month for the Pistons, but even more impressive is the young talent we have in this town. It's the Fan Report. Notice I didn't mention Stafford in that intro.
Well, the goal of today is to try to avoid the Stafford conversation as much as possible. I feel like we've talked that to death. I feel like the local radio stations have talked that to death. I feel like the beat writers have talked that to death. I feel like the national media has talked that to death. So I want to avoid the Stafford conversation as much as possible on this show this week for that reason. I feel like we're all just kind of tired of it at this point, and frankly, if we really wanted to and felt we needed to, we could have this conversation after, if and when he wins the Super Bowl.
I do have one football-related question for you, though, before we get into our main topics.
We could talk a few things football today.
Is Matt Millen just sitting back and saying, I told you so right now?
About what?
Bengals had 4 wins, drafted wide receiver, now they're in the Super Bowl.
Well, the Bengals did it because they got their quarterback. The wide receiver was just like to help the dude out, and there's also a bunch of other reasons why that team is good. But the quarterback is really what's making it happen for that team.
So wide receivers don't win Super Bowls?
No, they don't. But that's one thing Matt Millen could never do was get the right guy under center, and the Bengals did get the right guy. And frankly, I'll be honest with you. I like the Bengals. They're a fun team. They're a good team. I think they're playing with house money at this point. I think it took an absolutely colossal collapse by Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs to make that happen.
No credit to the Bengals for helping to make that collapse happen.
They deserve it, but there were a lot of boneheaded mistakes by Mahomes in that game. Like, he had a wide open end zone to run into from the 4-yard line and decided not to. That was one. He made multiple boneheaded mistakes in that game that costed them in the second half of that game that costed them the game. Multiple. And yes, the Bengals forced a lot of them. Sure, you can say that absolutely. And similar thing happened when the Chiefs played the Bengals the last time.
So you're taking the Rams minus 3.5 is what you're telling me.
The Rams are the favorite for a reason. And I'm honestly a little bit surprised it is only 3.5. I was thinking more of a 4.5, 5.5 point line. But it is the Super Bowl. You're going to be playing at the top of your game most likely. So obviously the game's probably going to be a bit closer. I would probably argue, though, that a 3.5 point favorite in the Super Bowl is one of the larger spreads we've seen in who knows how long. I would imagine. For the most part, I would think we would see spreads less than 3, but I could be wrong on that.
I'm trying to remember the Tampa Kansas City one. I'm trying to remember what that was. Was that 2 points?
I want to say it was about 2.5. Yeah, but either way, like
what Super Bowl number was that one? 45?
No.
Or 55, I mean?
55. 45 was when we were like that. Not saying the Bengals aren't a good team and don't deserve to be there, because they are, and they do. Like that's a team that has peaked at the right time. Joe Burrow's playing some of the best football he's played all year at the right time. And he caught some teams when he was able to take advantage of some not so stellar play.
It opened at Chiefs minus 3.5.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, let me ask you this.
I was just genuinely curious. I couldn't remember what the spread was for that game.
In that Chiefs-Bengals game, did you at all find yourself rooting against the Chiefs?
I mean, I always have a tendency to blindly root for the underdog team in a game that I don't have any stake in.
Fair.
So, yeah, because part of the reason that I kind of found myself rooting for the Bengals a little bit is like, I see it's just as a Lions fan, seeing a team that was just coming up a 4-win season go to the Super Bowl, just kind of something about that excites me a little bit.
And also an organization that has been utterly inept when it comes to the playoffs. Like, they've struggled to get to the playoffs, and when they have gotten to the playoffs, they've been garbage. Like that team has been completely and utterly garbage in the playoffs. So to see a team like that make it happen does give Lions fans a little bit of hope. More of what I'm getting at more so, though, is I did find myself rooting against the Chiefs a little bit, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the Kansas City Chiefs or any of its players or coaches. Pat Mahomes is starting to become unlikable, and it has nothing to do with him.
It's his brother?
It's his brother and it's his fiance. Like, they drive me nuts. Absolutely nuts. And to be completely honest with you, I know I'm not the only one that thinks this, because I've heard it all over everywhere, that people are starting to not like Pat Mahomes because of the people that are in his inner circle. And I feel bad for the guy, but he needs to stop. He needs to speak up and say, you two need to cut it out. Like, you're hurting my reputation here. And if you want to keep enjoying the luxuries of being in the part of the inner circle of one of the top NFL quarterbacks in the world, well, get your shit together and get in line. No more of this dumping champagne on people from 50 feet up when it's 5 degrees out. No more dancing on other teams' logos when, in all reality, you can't even dance. No more of this. So that was why I found myself rooting against Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs a little bit, because not to say I don't like Pat Mahomes, because I do. I think he's an awesome quarterback. He's very exciting to watch, and I'd love to see him continue to succeed, but I can't stand his inner circle. I can't. They're annoying.
I mean, I feel you, dude.
So, but anyways.
I don't disagree. Not one bit.
I do want to pose one Lions question before we move on to what we actually said was going to be the topics of the show. My Lions question is, with the confirmed situation of the Lions' second first-round pick via the Rams falling at either 31 or 32, depending on if the Rams win or not, does this mean the Lions got fleeced, or does this mean the Lions lost that trade to the Rams for Matthew Stafford?
I mean, I don't know what other people thought, but like in my head, at best, this was going to be a mid to high 20s.
That's a lot different than 31 or 32, though.
Yeah. Now we had a legitimate shot at it being 23 if the Rams could have gotten upset in the wild card round, but that didn't happen. But no, I think 2 first-round picks in general was what I was looking for as like a baseline for a trade for Matthew Stafford. I'm not upset about it. I was if I was upset about it, I would have been upset about it when it happened, because I was never expecting the Rams' first-round picks to be that high. So
I'm gonna say not yet. And the reason is because we still have no idea what the pick is next year. Like, the Rams could not. It's hard to repeat in this league. Very hard to repeat in this league. So the Rams may end very possibly could even miss the playoffs next year. We could end up with a pick in the teens. And if that's the case, I'd say we won the trade. But
what if they go back to the Super Bowl?
Then I think we lost the trade at that point. Hindsight tells us we lost that trade, because in all reality, 2 picks at 32 or at 31 or 32 is not the going rate for a Super Bowl winning quarterback or a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. And if he goes to back, that's what he is. And that's a given. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. He's a Super
I feel like the only people that fell to the Super Bowl caliber quarterback were Sean McVay and about half of Lions fans.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the media is obviously all over him right now and talking about how he is a Super Bowl quarterback. He is an elite tier quarterback. I tend to disagree still, but I think he's a good quarterback. He's good enough to get a really good team to a Super Bowl. But
we just couldn't help ourselves getting the Stafford talk, could we?
I don't think 2 back end firsts is enough for a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in this league. I don't. I think
So is part of what you're factoring in like his performance right now?
Yes,
is that
absolutely.
Part of what
Absolutely. It's through no fault of the Lions at all that they would have lost this trade.
I mean, it is kind of through their fault because they couldn't maximize their time with Stafford.
But if the Rams were to miss the playoffs, then the Lions would probably win that trade, unless the Rams win a Super Bowl and then miss the playoffs next year. That's a different argument. But like if the Lions end up not, getting a pick even in the 20s, I think that's a loss in the trade in my mind, because picks 30 and 30 are not good enough for a top tier quarterback in this league. You'll never see a trade for picks 30 and 30 go for, which technically isn't even possible, but it won't happen for a top tier quarterback. It's just a fact. You won't see that happen in this league, and in this case, it did.
What about picks 30 and 30 and Jared Goff?
Next. No, there is the question that I've heard raised is, would Jared Goff with the way he played in the final 3 or 4 games in this season, have taken this Rams team to the Super Bowl? I still say no, but I think he, at the very least, wins a playoff game. Very least wins a playoff game. If he plays the full season in the playoffs the way he played the final 3 or 4 games of this year, I think that Rams team does win a playoff game with him.
I mean, they have, but also with Todd Gurley. So, anyway, on the hoops / hockey.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So let's talk about the Pistons first, and then we'll bring it all around with the young talent talk in this town. And it's actually going to be more than just Pistons and Wings related. I'm bringing all the young talent in this town into the conversation.
Yeah, it's young talent in this town, not just on this team.
Right. So let's talk Pistons first. Go ahead and introduce what you had in mind.
So, going into the new year, Pistons were sitting well at the bottom of the league at 5-28 through 33 games. Then comes January, and this team suddenly looked very different on the basketball court. They went 7-9, wins over Milwaukee, Utah, Cleveland, probably the 3 most impressive. Denver's decently commendable win as well. But it's not just the fact that they went 7-9. It's the fact that games that we saw them laying down and just accepting defeat seemingly in those first 33 games, they're now turning around and fighting through, and sometimes even coming out on top in those same games. Like, the things we were complaining about before are mostly being addressed or mostly had been addressed in January, outside of maybe the Magic game. That was kind of embarrassing. But
every team has duds of games. There's no doubt about it.
Every team has duds. But with that happening, the Pistons no longer have the worst record in the league, and they're a couple games away from no longer even being in the bottom 3. So their chances at having that equal shot at the top pick are starting to become in question, kind of in jeopardy. But they've played their best month of basketball of the season, and you saw a lot of strides that you wanted to see. Is this a positive? Is it something you're happy about, or are you valuing the draft pick more?
So I'm happy. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I value the draft pick more right now because I think adding somebody like a Jabari Smith to this team is something that would launch this team into almost a full rebuild, like a completed rebuild. Like, you're almost done at that point. So I do value that draft pick first and foremost. However, what we've seen from the Pistons in the month of January is a hell of a lot closer to what I expected of this team coming into the season. We've seen the shooting numbers improve. They're not great still, but they've improved from what they were over the first couple months of the year. And again, we talked about how the shooting will not be this bad throughout the course of a year. It will get better. And that's what's happened. And I think that's attributed to a lot of the reasons why the Pistons have played some better basketball is because the shooting has improved. Almost entirely across the board. We've gotten guys like Frank Jackson back into the lineup, who's been hot and cold, but made some shots at times. Cade Cunningham has put up some...
He's hot at the moment.
Yes, but Cade Cunningham has put up some excellent performances out there and really coming into his own as a player in this league. He's starting to increase his shooting percentage in a big way, and really taking control of games as well. Sadiq Bey's shooting has vastly improved since the beginning of the year. I mean, we talked about stats how his shooting was quite literally tanking this basketball team. Well, he's started to turn things around quite a bit. Yes, he has dud games again. He is wildly inconsistent, but his good nights have been more often and really good.
It's starting to feel like you're getting 30 or nothing from Sadiq.
It really has, and it's scary, but having that threat of 30 there, it does make a difference. But overall, this team we're starting to see guys fill into roles a little bit better. We tried the Cade and Killian thing in the backcourt to begin the year, and it obviously struggled. It wasn't a success. Now we've seen Killian move off to the bench and be more of a defensive specialist who is able to facilitate the basketball, doesn't have to rely on him being a shooter as much, because instead of a situation where Cade trying to facilitate with a guy in his backcourt that can't shoot, well, now it's Killian Hayes that can facilitate with 4 guys on the floor that have an ability to score a little bit. And that makes a big difference, if you ask me.
Yeah. Not to mention, I mean, it's still not where I want it to be, but what I've noticed since he's been coming off the bench is he is starting to show some willingness to actually drive and try to draw contact, which I don't know if it was just he didn't have the confidence to do it against starting caliber players in the NBA, but there's at least a budding semblance of that happening. It's still nowhere near
I was going to say,
that
I
I want
still
to
see
see
him pass out of his drives when he gets to the basket
he still does it all the time.
And I
He still
would
does it all
rather
the time.
him not do that.
Yeah.
Because he's a good free throw shooter. Take the contact, take the harm, and get to the line and hit your free throw.
Exactly.
But that's something
That's what
that
Casey's been preaching to him too, reportedly.
Right.
So,
right. I think that's something that'll come with some time and comfortability in this league. And Killian, in my opinion, has improved slightly since his move to the bench. He still has to find a way to develop that shot. Otherwise, he probably won't make it in this league. But other than that, though, I mean, I've liked what I've seen out of some guys in recent games. Like Isaiah Stewart's played better ball as of late. Is it a little bit of a factor of the fact of the centers he's played opposite against in his good games? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he beat up Vucevic a little bit. He beat up Nikola Jokic, who's not very good defensively, a little bit. But he also got beat by those guys in those games as well. But we have seen better ball from Isaiah Stewart than we did in the beginning of the year. So I literally think this is more so we've seen this team come back to the mean a little bit. And play a little bit more closer to what we expected of them at the beginning of the year. Sure, the shooting numbers aren't quite there yet, but they're getting there. And this is more of what this team is. They're a below average team. They're not a bottom 3 team in this league, in my opinion. But their start may keep them there, and that's okay because again, I value that draft pick more than I value W's in the numbers in the win column right now.
Yeah, because let's be real. The Pistons are, I believe, 12 or 13 games out of that last bubble spot, out of the 10 seed. So, yeah, wins are kind of meaningless in terms of trying to make a playoff push at this point. Like, that's out the window. But the wins do have meaning in just kind of building some character with this team and getting these guys some confidence and just seeing actual tangible improvement with the team. That's where the actual meaning comes with these wins. Now, in my opinion, I was kind of I wouldn't say happy, but I wasn't too upset about the slow start because I'm like, we really need bigs, and we have 3 pretty intriguing bigs coming through this draft, probably going to go all in the top 3. So I kind of want a top 3 pick in this draft. But at the same time, I don't know if I want to just let this team just constantly lose over and over again when you're on the clock with Cade Cunningham now. Like, when you have a guy of Cade Cunningham's caliber, you can't afford to lose basketball games because you run the risk of losing a guy who should be your franchise player.
Right. You at least in my opinion, you get 1 year to essentially consider it a wash. Essentially just say we're building. After that 1 year is up, though, when you have a guy like Cade Cunningham, it's time to start putting wins in the win column and stacking them together and start fighting for a playoff spot. And then by year 3, you should be winning games to the point where you're one of the upper echelon teams in your conference. So, yeah, the clock is ticking. And this year, sure, fine, you can lose as many games as you want. Next year, that's not the case, though. And my expectations for this team next year are going to change. They are going to be, this team needs to be competing for a playoff spot. That was my ceiling for that team this year coming in. It was vastly wrong, but next year, that is my expectation for this team. Because we've seen Sadiq Bey come up and come through. We've seen Cade Cunningham show what he can do. We've seen Hamidou Diallo put up some numbers and be a vital part of this team. And we've seen Isaiah Stewart and what he can do. And that's not to mention, you're also talking about a very high lottery pick in this upcoming draft that's going to add to that. So we need to start putting some wins on the board starting next year and competing for a playoff spot. When you get guys like Cade Cunningham, you're not afforded the luxury of sitting back and waiting anymore. You have to start winning.
Yeah. And to be honest, like, even when you consider, our draft pick is slipping, there's more that this team needs than just bigs. Like, we need scoring pretty badly on this team.
They desperately need shooting.
So you can actually afford to slip. You still can probably get a guy like Jaden Ivey or Shaden Sharp. I mean, those are two guards that I think could be really useful on this squad.
And you want to say that Jaden Ivey's too small? Fine. Guess what? Cade Cunningham's 6'6", so I don't think the other guard's size matters.
You know who isn't too small? Shaden Sharp.
No, he's not. Absolutely. But, I mean, there's other guards out there that you can look at. I mean, there's Max Christie, who's also 6'6". Like, there's size there. Jaden Hardy, he's 6'4". He's a little smaller. Johnny Davis, 6'5". Ty Washington, a little smaller, 6'3", he's more of a point guard. But Blake Wesley, a combo guard, 6'5". Like, there's size at this two-guard position that you can go after in this draft in the top 10 here. There's a lot of them. And that absolutely, like, this draft board, in my opinion, could not have fallen better, could not be a better situation for the Pistons than it's been. Yeah. Because what's in the top 10 of the draft? The two positions that fill needs on this team. So no matter where you fall, you get a guy that you need. You just got to make sure he's good.
Yeah, you got to make sure you get the right guy.
Exactly. But they're all there.
Yeah. So, yeah, as of right now, I am happy with what I saw in January. I'm not sweating too much about the draft pick, which is kind of the opposite sentiment that I had last year. But, yeah, I'm not sweating too much about the draft pick. You got the number one pick already. That happened. You need to start trying to actually win some games.
Absolutely. And frankly, like we said, this year, wins don't really matter. They don't. Not anymore. And frankly, I'd rather see this team lose some more games than they have been. But it is encouraging to see them come into their own a little bit and play some good basketball. And that's exactly what they've been doing in the last month. It's been
and showing some fight, like those starts against Utah, against Cleveland.
Right.
Cleveland, they didn't make a shot almost. They almost went the whole first quarter on making a shot, and they somehow came back in the first quarter.
It's been wildly inconsistent ball.
Yeah,
but it's been better ball. Like, and a lot of it has to do with the resurgence of guys like Caden Sadiq, because when the team's playing well, there's a really good chance it's because of those two guys. So the wins come from those guys right now. But as I say that, an announcement's been made for tonight's game. Jeremy Grant's returning up against the Pelicans. So there's another guy who's going to be put into a situation where he's really kind of got to play well too, because we need his trade stock to rise and really entice these teams to give up a lot. What we're asking for.
My attention's on Sadiq Bey tonight. That's
yes.
I want to see where he goes with this. Like, coming off a 30-point game. Now you got Jeremy Grant back, who you were not really coexisting too well with to start the season. Can you keep up the strong performances?
That was actually going to be my next question for you is, what do we do? Like, what happens with Sadiq Bey? We've seen him play well. We've seen him play very well in the Jeremy Grant sort of role. Do we ask Bey to go back to the role he was put in to begin the year when he struggled, or do we have him continue in that role and move Grant's role?
So here's two strong feelings that I have about what's going to happen. One, I have a very strong feeling the Pistons are going to be showcasing Jeremy Grant from here at the trade deadline.
As they should be.
So I do expect Jeremy Grant to obviously have less shots than he did when Jeremy Grant was out.
You mean Sadiq?
Sorry, Sadiq. But two, on the Sadiq side of it, I do think there is a lot to be said of the confidence that Sadiq has gained since Jeremy Grant has been out.
100%.
So I do think that while he may have less opportunities, I expect him to be more efficient with those opportunities.
Be more aggressive and make the most of the opportunities that he's given. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Because what you saw with Sadiq in a lot of circumstances beginning of the year was as he was seeing the shot not fall, he started to be a little more hesitant. Yeah. And wasn't willing to take the shot when it was there. And it really started to affect his game. We saw him miss more and more shots because of that. Well, I would imagine he's gained that confidence back now. And he's probably at the top of his confidence for the year right now. And so I think he's going to be smart with his shots, but also be willing to take the shots. I don't think he's going to shy away from anything because Jeremy Grant's on the floor now. So I definitely think Sadiq's going to be playing different ball than he did at the beginning of the year. Plus, I mean, let's be real. Sadiq is not as bad of a shooter as the beginning of the year numbers showed. And that's true with pretty much every player on this team. They were shooting an NBA record low.
Yeah.
Nobody on this team is that bad of a shooter except maybe Killian Hayes. But nobody on that team is that bad of a shooter. And Sadiq that's especially true with Sadiq. So I definitely expect Sadiq Bey to, yes, take fewer shots, but be more efficient with the ball in his hands and still put up some numbers. And you'll see games where he does take over. But I definitely don't expect to see as often these 25, 30-point games from Sadiq Bey. I think we'll start to see his average start to show up more, that 16, 17-point games a little bit more often than we have seen lately.
Do you think he removed the headband in preparation for the return of Jeremy Grant?
No, I think he tried the headband out because it was something different. And it clearly wasn't, things clearly weren't working. Players are superstitious, athletes are superstitious, so he tried something different. He went, oh, this kind of works. Well, I mean, lately that hot hand fallacy's kind of come to fruition, and he's not been as hot as consistently. He's been wildly inconsistent. So he ditched it and said, I wasn't good because of the headband. I'm good because I'm a good player.
I noticed when I was at the game on Sunday, I noticed he's not the only one that ditched the look. Hami ditched the mask. Frank Jackson
Why was he wearing the mask, by the way?
Broke his nose.
When?
Earlier this season.
Was
don't remember the exact moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Freddie Mercury. Wow. Frank Jackson.
Mercury.
Frank Jackson shaved the Freddie Mercury stash.
Oh man, I like the stash.
So I don't know. This team is going through a transition. I feel they're now coming of age. I think it's what's happening.
A little bit of an identity crisis. But let's hope Jeremy Grant coming to the floor brings some good basketball and doesn't send them back to where they were at the beginning of the year, because that was not fun to watch.
No.
With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic of the night. Something I proposed pre-show to Andrew was a discussion about the young talent in this town, and primarily the hype surrounding the young talent in this town.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we have a plethora of prospects. I'll be straight up, an insane amount of top tier prospects in this town. Just with the Pistons, we're looking at Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey. You want to include Isaiah Stewart and Killian Hayes in that? Fine. Moving on to the Lions, we've still got DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, Panay Sewell. Some of the guys in the defense have really shown up in big ways.
Jerry Jacobs, for one.
Jerry Jacobs is a perfect example. Looking at the Tigers, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, Casey Mize, Spencer Turnbull's still young, Tariq Skubal, Matt Manning, another guy who's young and a big-time prospect. Looking at the wings, Lucas Raymond, Mo Sider, Alex Adelkovic, all three are in the top 10 of the Calder Cup conversation, or Calder Trophy conversation right now.
With Raymond and Sider, I believe, leading. Top two, right?
In my opinion, Sider is number one, but recent polls have shown not Raymond. Sider's number, in my opinion, Sider should be the far and away winner. But right now, the polls show Trevor Zegras as the leader from Anaheim. I'm
actually curious about. I'm gonna pull some odds. I'm trying to find the most
I think Trevor
odds.
Zegras is your favorite, with Mo Sider being 2. Raymond's probably 4th, if I had to guess. But also, they've got Jonathan Bergeron. They've got Edvinson from on the D line. They've got more prospects. Sebastian Kosa. They've got more prospects in the pipeline for the Wings that will likely make big impacts in this league someday. So the list of names of top tier young talent that this city has obviously brought around a ton of hype and a ton of excitement and a seemingly endless amount of hope in this town that, oh, we're back. It's Championship City again. I really don't want to, but I feel like I have to. We got to kind of temper the expectations and the hope a little bit. Just a little. I know there's a lot to be excited about, but I don't want to see this town get disappointed when one of these guys doesn't make it. One of these guys doesn't succeed, because with the amount of names that we have, it is bound to happen. There's just too many names in the pipeline on these rosters that have looked great to start for them all to succeed. Too many names. And
but they're pretty well spread out.
Yes and no. I mean, the Tigers are banking on a ton of young prospects. The Wings are.
Don't talk about the names we named. We named a pretty like spread out, like an even number of prospects on 4 teams. Like,
right, but 4
it's not like we named like 10 prospects for one team.
But my point is, like, we got to kind of temper the expectations a little bit because some of these guys aren't going to work out. It's just, if they all do, shit, I'm buying a lottery ticket. Because that's unheard of to see all these prospects succeed at the levels that we expect them to. That doesn't mean that we won't get more guys to come in and fill the role we were going to ask them to play, and we won't return back to a top of the conferences and top of the league, because we will. I am 100% confident all of our teams, except maybe one, will return to greatness in their leagues.
And it doesn't mean these prospects are going to go bust either. It's just, what are the chances they all become superstars? Like,
right.
That's
and yes, I know right now we have the expectations that these guys are all going to be superstars, but in all reality, that's just not possible. Like, you can't have 4 superstars on one basketball team. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think Cade is likely to ascend to that status.
Yes.
I think Sadiq could be like ceiling like multiple time All-Star, like 2 or 3 time All-Star.
I think he's going to be a really good player. Like Chris Middleton is what I can see Sadiq Bey becoming in this league. A guy who can make plays, probably makes an All-Star or 2 in his career, but is a good player on a championship contending team.
I wouldn't go full on superstar, but I could see him being a star player.
A good player in this league, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, if Torkelson can hit for average and continue to hit for power, he'll be a star. Riley Green looks like a 5-tool talent. I mean, he's a guy who you expect to be one of the leaders of the future of this team. And then you look at the Wings, and frankly, they may be the case where all the names I mentioned actually hit. Because holy shit, have they looked good. Like,
I was about to ask you, like, where do you separate between Side and Raymond? Like, can you really argue against either of them for, superstar caliber?
Let me put it this way. Right here, right now, Mo Sider is the better player. Reason I say that, right here, right now, Mo Sider is, in all honesty, flirting with being a top 10 D-man in the league.
Yeah.
In the league right now, he is a dominant D-man. He does everything well. Everything, including continuing the Detroit tradition of punching Sidney Crosby in the face.
Whereas Lucas Raymond's more like an offensive force, right?
Oh, no, Lucas Raymond's a very good two-way player. Very good two-way player.
Still learning.
Yeah, he is still learning. But so what?
No, I said I'm still learning.
One thing I've seen with Lucas Raymond, and this is something that actually has encouraged me a little bit, is, well, yes, we've seen his goal-scoring numbers slow down in a big way in the last month. He's adjusted. And whereas he got off to this tear, this absolutely incredibly scorching hot start, putting the puck in the net, facilitating and creating offense for his teammates, when defenses started to adjust to him, he slowed down. The goals stopped coming and the assists started to slow down. Well, we've started to see the numbers, at least the assist numbers, start rising again. And he is in the play, making things happen. So he's made the adjustment, and that's what was something that was going to be needed for him to do to take a step in this league and be successful. Can he adjust to the defense shutting down what he likes to do? And I'm starting to see him get more comfortable with changing up the way he does things. And that's why I think Lucas Raymond will make it in this league. Absolutely. And he very well could be a star. He's 19 years old and playing on the top line on this team. And in the case of Mo Sider, kid's 20 and playing like he's one of the top 10 D-men in this league. Guy's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's, in my opinion, with how crafty he is with the puck, you could be looking at a guy whose name is up there in terms of ability to create offense from the blue line. He could put his name up there with the likes of the Cale Makars of the world. The best offensive D-man in the league. And Sider could put his name right up there. He's a little more physical and bigger, not quite as flashy, but you know what? He's got the ability to make the move and got the ability to carry the puck with speed himself and make plays. And that's not something you see out of D-men, especially not 20-year-old D-men every day. That's for sure. But talking about the rest of these guys, like we mentioned the Lions young guys. Yeah, we've seen a couple of them take a step back a bit, but I fully expect them to bounce back and have bigger years next year as this team starts to develop an identity.
One can only hope.
There is a lot to be excited about in this town, and I'm not saying, and I know I said temper the expectations, I'm not saying to just give up all hope. I'm just saying that there's a really good chance at least one or two of these guys isn't going to be what we expect them to be.
Again, like don't in terms of temper your expectations, it's not like, one of the, like, we're not actually going to have 4 good teams in this town. It's don't fully invest in all these guys. Don't like be devastated if one of these guys isn't
a total
reach their full
superstar.
potential.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's bound to happen. But again, I'm not saying that these teams aren't going to be great, that we can't rely on the youth of this town and on these teams to bring us back to greatness, because we can, we are, and we will be back to greatness. And those young guys will be the reason for it. For all 4 of these teams, especially the 3 that we know are on their way.
I do have an interesting question that I want to piggyback off of this topic here. And it's really talking about like Sider versus Cade here. And they're both right now second in odds for Rookie of the Year, but both making very strong pushes as the season goes along. I'm just curious, you think if one of them were to actually overtake the number 1 spot and win Rookie of the Year, who do you think is more likely to do it? Or do you think both could do it?
I'll be honest with you, I think both could do it, and I think both will do it.
Cade has been making a really strong, like over the last 25 games, Cade's averaging 18 points, 5.7 assists, 4.8 boards on 40% shooting from 3, 43 from the field.
Cade is taking over games.
Yeah, that's the key part. Is so like Evan Mobley is currently the leader, and deservedly so. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's been
absolutely excellent. But he doesn't necessarily take over games the way Cade has.
Yeah. Evan Mobley's not the guy that's creating. He's feeding off his teammates and taking the opportunities that are given to him. And
I'll tell you right now,
opportunities. Cade is actually willing this, in January at least, willing this team to victories and basically creating the offense.
I'll tell you right now, Evan Mobley owes Darius Garland a steak dinner, and a lot of them.
James Edwards actually, because he had been saying that he thinks Evan Mobley is like uncatchable. Not uncatchable. He said he thinks that Mobley's going to win, but he actually recently pivoted and called his shot, saying we're going to have, for the first time in a long time, co-Rookie of the Year winners.
Really? So I actually saw something at the start of the Wings game last night. A really interesting stat. And a little bit of trivia for you. Who was the last town to have Rookie of the Year in the NBA and the NHL?
Boston.
Damn it, you're right. How'd you know this? Do you know who
Larry
the players
Bird
were?
and Borg?
Ray Bork, yeah. Two absolute legends of their games, by the way. How'd you know that? I know you don't watch Wings games like I do, especially not Anaheim.
I've heard it referred to like 3 different times over the last few days.
Fair enough. But I mean, that goes to tell you what kind of momentum that these two guys have right now in terms of the way that they've played and how they've moved up in that Rookie of the Year pecking order, because Sider's taken the league by storm, and in my opinion, really should be the favorite to win the Calder Trophy right now. It drives me nuts that, like, so there's a Calder Cup and a Calder Trophy, and they're 2 different things. The Calder Cup is the league championship for the AHL, the minor league of the NHL. The Calder Trophy is the Rookie of the Year award in the NHL. Very confusing.
Both named after the same guy?
Yes, I believe so.
Or is there another Calder?
No, I think it's the same guy. But that's beside the point. But beyond that, like, Sider, in my opinion, has put himself into a situation where I think he should be the odds-on favorite to win the award. Cade, especially as of late, is sure as hell closing that gap in a very quick way.
Yeah.
And it's not with any fault to Evan Mobley, because he's still continued to play well. It's how good Cade has been.
Exactly.
Because in most years, if you saw a guy putting up 18 points per game, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists, plus the defensive numbers that he's putting up on 40% shooting from 3 and 44 from the field, that's a Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Almost every year.
This honestly, like, this looks like it could be shaping up to be
the best
rookie class in 03. Yeah, because I mean, already you're seeing Evan Mobley, Kate Cunningham, Scotty Barnes has been great. Josh Giddey has been fantastic. Ayo Dosunmu, since getting into that lineup because of what's his name, the dude from the Lakers, Jesus Christ,
Taylor Horton Tucker.
No, on the Chicago.
Oh, Dosunmu.
Yeah, I know the white dude,
Alex Caruso.
Thank you. Ever since Alex Caruso went down,
since Grayson Allen just decided to assassinate Alex Caruso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Dosunmu got in the lineup. I mean, he has been on fire.
Dosunmu is, in all reality, like in all honesty, low key one of my favorite young players in the league. I love the way he plays the game. I really do. And
you got Franz Wagner has been better.
Okay, let me ask you this: how much of that is due to the fact that his team is so god awful around him? And you could straight up say the same for Cade. Don't get me wrong. But how much of that with Franz Wagner? Because he doesn't do anything else really. He scores.
I mean, it's just.
And that, in my opinion, is the one thing that you can do, have a major increase on because of the lack of talent around you.
Yeah, I don't have a solid argument to counter that. So, I guess all I can say is we'll have to wait till they get another true scorer on that team. Because right now, with that role, Franz Wagner has been better than advertised to me, at least.
Oh, absolutely. He's definitely been better than what I expected him to be coming into the year. There's no question about it. I'm just curious as to, if that team were to get a true shooter, a true scorer on that team, how much would it affect Franz Wagner's offensive output? And
that's not even mentioning guys like Alpi Şengün, who has been efficient in the limited minutes he gets, and I expect him to blow up once he finally gets a solid minute allotment in that Houston lineup. And then I do think Jalen Green will turn around at some point.
I do too. There's no way he can be that bad, can he?
It can't be.
Because my God, does he not look good?
I mean, I started seeing the red flags. During
draft day.
We got draft day basically, and just this kid might be more of a distraction to himself than anyone else.
He plays with the mentality of it's me or nobody,
and it's me ball.
Yeah, and that's just how he is, and I'm not a fan of the way he carries himself at all. I think he can be a detriment to his team in that regard.
Yeah, because I remember the big red flag for me was when he got drafted. They asked him what his goals are as a Houston Rocket, and he said Rookie of the Year, max contract, and then MVP. Yeah. So no winning? You just want to
right?
all just you goals? Okay.
All right, there, bud.
But honestly, though, if we can get if Houston give up on him and we compare him with Cade, I won't say no.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy who can score, and we need that, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see something in the dunk contest this year?
I did see that.
Yeah. I kind of want Hami to go back.
I do, too, and I think he could do it, and I think he'd do well.
Yeah. He did win it.
He did, and he's been exciting this year, too.
Yeah.
He's shown he's still got some bounce in those legs.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, do you have anything else to add? Because that's about all I got.
No, that pretty much covered it. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I mean, there's a lot to be excited about in this town, and for good reason. So It's good to see.
I love that we delivered a positive show when most people are kind of downbeat because of what's happening with Stafford and how the Lions kind of botched that whole.
I mean, I get why people are upset. And you know what? That's fine for them. But I'm choosing to not be as upset because, again, I felt like it was time for the Lions to move on. Mm-hmm. And frankly, if the Lions end up losing that trade because the Rams win a Super Bowl and go back to another or whatever, and so be it. That's not their fault. They got what they thought he was worth.
Oh, not to get into talk about the way what I've been seeing and what I kind of understand is I've seen people be upset, not so much about the trade itself, but it's starting to look like Stafford was actually another wasted, possibly Hall of Fame talent that the Lions just did nothing with. That kind of thing is an existential type thing.
And you know what? They're right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right to have that mentality and be down on the team because of that. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, we got a different regime now. The only thing that's the same as the Fords, which could be the problem. But it's time to just build back up.
Yeah.
And besides them, there is a lot to be excited about in this town.
Yeah.
So,
like a phoenix, Detroit rises from the ashes.
I choose to not be all doom and gloom with the Lions and Stafford. I'm choosing to be optimistic and excited about the future of the rest of our teams in this town, and even be a little bit excited about what could come with the Pistons.
Yeah.
So, or not the Pistons, the Lions. So, it is what it is. I'm choosing to be happy and excited and hopeful for once in my life when it comes to teams in this town.
Yep. No, I fully agree.
On that note, that is going to close it out for this week, guys. Thank you for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport, and we will catch you guys next week. Andrew, thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast, as always. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Report. Was by fans.
For fans.
Have a good one, guys. Enjoy. Catch you later.
Deuces.